As we roll into the school year 2020-2021, we find ourselves pioneering a grand transformation, enforcing health and safety measures while embracing online learning. There is no question that the decisions and solutions implemented over the next few months will lay the groundwork for a more modernized school system and pave the future for Filipino education. Hello, everyone. My name is Mark Payumo Abalos, Globe Segment Head for Education, and tonight I'm joined by a variety of education experts who can help us paint a picture of what exactly the future might look like. So, without further ado, please welcome our distinguished panel. Hello, panelists. Please introduce yourselves and your respective organizations.
I'm Alain Pasqua. I'm the Undersecretary at the Department of Education.
Hi, I'm Attorney Cinderella Filipina Benitez Haro. I'm the Executive Director of the Commission on Higher Education.
Good evening. I'm Dr. Caroline Marian Santos Enriquez. I'm the President of Our Lady of Fatima University and the President of PACU, the Philippine Association of Colleges and Universities.
So before we can accurately discuss the future, let's talk about the present. Yusek Alain, on a macro level, how are schools adapting to a more digital landscape and what barriers stand in their way?
Well, in DepEd, we have prepared our public schools through our program, which we call the Public Schools of the Future. We have there a digital rice program where we use technology and we prioritize the use of technology for the learning and teaching process. Pin-repair namin ito, lahat ng mga schools namin ay binigyan namin ng iba't ibang mga packages sa computer. At ngayon ay we are trying to finish our first phase of the interconnectivity program. We would like to have all our schools and all our offices connected to one another through the public education network. And after this, we would be delivering resources or contents to our schools. One of the difficulties here in implementing this is that some of the areas, some of the schools that we now have really no connectivity because not the telcos are not there or the other resources are not there. So we'll be forced to use other kinds of technologies in order to connect them. These are things that we are now checking and we are adjusting our programs so that we could deliver all the necessary technology to all our schools.
The same question goes to Attorney Haro. On a macro level, how are schools adapting to a more digital landscape and what barriers stand in the way?
So let me just put a context to it, Marka. Even before the pandemic, there are some higher education institutions which are already delivering learning through online. So these are leading universities, and the transition to full online or to the full online mode of delivery is not difficult for most of these universities. There are also some institutions or higher education institutions which are already capable of delivering naman through blended learning. So sa blended learning natin, of course, this is a mix of either online or offline mode of delivery. But of course, even if under online, sa online delivery mode natin o sa blended learning natin, there are still challenges. For instance, ang challenge natin, even if an institution is capable, there are some students which have low connectivity or limited capability naman to connect. So these are the things that, of course, that we should envision or that we should pose a solution or a remedy so that even despite these challenges, we can continue our learning.
Doc Carol, in your case po, what are some of the barriers that you've encountered? Not just for schools, but also for students, for parents, and communities.
First of all, most especially for private education or education in particular, the first barrier involves dealing with the mindsets of students and parents, especially with acceptance of online or flexible learning as the best available alternative solution to delivering education now. It's difficult to sell the idea of learning digitally or through learning packets or such as remote learning, especially so because they're used to the notion that learning can only happen within the confines of a classroom within walls. So that's for most of the parents and the students. And then secondly, we have issues on dwindling financial resources, or worse, lack of financial resources or the capabilities to pay for our tuition. So parents would prioritize the basic essential needs first. So that puts education at the back end. So now they're very prudent with spending. So food, shelter, health would be their priorities. Education, although important, would most likely take a back seat. And then thirdly, technological support or infrastructure is also a major concern for us here. Is it accessible? Is it available? Where I am? Is it affordable? Are some of the issues that constitute barriers to education and to our students and parents.
Thank you, Doc Carol, Attorney Cindy, and Yusek Lane. So I like the very idea that DepEd and CHED have already started adapting technology even before the pandemic struck. The good thing here is that, of course, there are also several preparations that we need to do in terms of making sure that in the opening of this school year, everyone is prepared. Also, I agree with Doc Carol that in terms of the mindset, the shifting of the mindset, this is something that's really very difficult because it's some sort of a cultural thing. In tech integration, there has to be some sort of cultural differences. Maybe some people would have resources, some people are familiar with technology, and some people would not be able to grasp the full concept of integration. So going to our next question, because of the ongoing volatile nature of the pandemic, parents, students, even teachers have expressed their anxieties over the possibility of the academic freeze. So, Attorney Harrow, is this scenario likely, and how would CHED potentially address it?
Okay. It is true, Mark, that there are some stakeholders who are petitioning for academic fees. But I think that that petition comes from the misconception that CHED would do the following. One, that CHED will espouse a policy of a full online mode of delivery, or that CHED will espouse a general, of course, residential or a full residential or yung tinatawag natin in-person classes. Let me siguro emphasize that sa CHED, we are of course espousing a flexible mode of delivery. Ibig sabihin, we are embracing that there are other modes of delivery for the continuity of learning, such as, of course, online, kasama pa rin yan, blended, at meron pa rin offline. Doon naman sa sinasabi nila or misconception that we are espousing a full online, yun na nga, we are espousing actually a flexible mode of delivery. Same goes with the concept of yung full residential. What we will be espousing is that limited face-to-face classes, because we have to consider various considerations. For instance, the health situation, the health status, yung quarantine status ng isang lugar o ng isang region, situations on the ground, the capability of our institutions, and our students as well. So, yung gaya nga na sinasabi ko, if we would be able to correct these misconceptions na full online o kaya naman full residential, then I think our stakeholders would understand and would not claim for academic fees and would continue with learning despite this pandemic.
Thank you, Attorney Cindy. So, contextual talaga siya, no? Hindi talaga siya yung parang full online, hindi talaga siya yung nasa bahay ka lang. There will be considerations in terms of the locale where the school is situated, kung anong probinsya niya, kung anong region. Because, again, magkakaiba naman po at may mga areas talaga na walang cases. How about you, Yusek Alain? Sa DepEd po, ano ang insights nyo in terms of the academic freeze? Will this most likely be happening in the next couple of months?
Our marching orders from the Secretary Leonor Magtolis Briones, is very clear. Education must continue, no matter what the situation is. It already happened in the past where we have so many typhoons, calamities, floods, etc., and yet education continued. We have been challenged by armed conflict in Marawi, and education still continued. And then recently, we have Taal volcano eruption, and still, education continued. This COVID-19 pandemic is like the same crisis that we have, and we think and we believe that education must still continue. Education or learning can never be frozen. So we are doing all our best to deliver education even in the comforts of the homes of the learners, even if we do not have the traditional face-to-face classes. We have blended learning, we have modular approaches, we have online platforms, we have TV and radio broadcasting networks, and we will be utilizing all available technologies, whether these are new or old, as long as we would pursue our mandate of delivering education to our learners, whether these are not at this time, not on the classrooms, but in the comforts of their home.
Yes po, because dahil nga po may mga teachers nga po ako na kaibigan, kaklase, they have been doing their effort also in doing this initiative from the DepEd. No? So I particularly have a friend who teach in the mountains. At siya mismo ang nagpapa-photocopy ng mga ng mga modules na para i-deliver mismo sa mga bata. And even here in the NCR, I have friends also who teach in Quezon City, and they are doing the same. So it's not really as if we're we're in the middle of the crisis, but it's not really as if we're gonna stop everyone from learning. So Doc Carol, in terms of the private institutions po, what measures might private institutions take into consideration in terms of this academic freeze?
Mark, allow me to first put things in perspective. So let me tell you what PACU is all about, so you have an understanding of what we have been doing since the lockdown. So first, PACU is the oldest association of private schools in the Philippines. It was established about 88 years ago, and currently we have around 193 schools, both big and small, private schools around the countries with around 850,000 students across the regions. So when the COVID situation put us on lockdown and then closed our schools unexpectedly, towards the end of the semester, we simply cooperated with all government advisories regarding school operations. So when we were told to lock down and end the semester, we did. When we were told to put our receivables on hold, we did, because we wanted to help also the students to make sure that we can finish education at the right time and without any issues or problems with regards to the balances. So what we did was we pushed forward, or we carried forward to the next sem most of our tuition balances. So as an association, this is what we did. PACU met frequently, almost every week. So you have in a Zoom meeting about 80 university presidents, all discussing, all talking about and sharing practices among universities. How can we help each other? How can we mentor each other? What are the solutions or the practices that we could engage in so that we could solve this problem that came to us unexpectedly? We all know that, and we all know that there are different solutions to different needs of the association. So we tried our best to talk it out and to navigate the crisis. But on a more structured front, PACU also advocated for support for private education sector from the government and also from the legislature. So what did we do? We asked for inclusion in the social amelioration program of the government, where private education sector was not given any form of financial support to our private teachers and our staff. We also asked support for our students so that they can continue their education, especially since they come from parents who lost their jobs, since most of them are children of OFWs or children, parents who are in the retail business or transportation services, so that they could be included in subsidies in the UniFast or in the ESC. We asked for budgets for them. And then we also asked for support for internet connectivity, Mark. And you know that we asked for special discounts for internet data plans for our students.
Thank you, Doc Carol. These are some of the things that we have been working in the past few months. I've sat with Yusek Alain for a webinar, and Doc Carol is always with us in terms of making sure that students are provided with connectivity packages. But let's discuss long-term solutions, because I think recently we've also coordinated with Attorney Harrow in terms of making sure that Shed Connect is one of the most pressing projects that needed to be rolled out in the past months. Let's talk about long-term solutions. USEC Alain, what large-scale measures is DepEd implementing to ease digital transformation in schools, and what are your milestones in terms of these digital transformation initiatives?
Yeah, one of our major programs now is the DepEd Commons. Now, we have been planning for the for this online platform for the last few months, but when the pandemic kicked in during the first quarter of this year, we were forced to put it live and publish it so that our learners will still have access to the materials that they would be needing for the last quarter period. So we were forced to publish and to make live the DepEd Commons, where all available materials can be accessed by the teachers and by the learners themselves. So this DepEd Commons is actually our platform where all available materials coming from the different sources and then coming from teachers and coming from our textbooks, our lessons, our experiences, etc., will be uploaded so that they can be accessed at any given time by our learners and by our teachers. Now, we are preparing for the next school year for our self-learning modules to be uploaded, and also our DepEd TV and video and audio episodes, so that all these things, all these materials could help in the development or in the delivery of basic education to our learners. And aside from the DepEd Commons that is being used now or being accessed now, we will also be launching this school year the DepEd Learning Management System. Well, this kind of system will be used by our teachers in delivering education, in teaching, and this will be integrated with the DepEd Commons. No? Aside from this, we also have our TV broadcasting and our radio broadcasting. And everything will be connected via our public education networks, which we have just started now. No? We have different milestones every quarter and every year, but since the present condition is forcing us to surpass all our milestones and to really deliver basic education to our learners, then whatever opportunities we have and whatever collaboration we have with the private sector and with other agencies of the government is being explored in order to reach out to our learners. So right now, we are test broadcasting our TV and radio programs so that we will have a feel of how these programs are being undertaken. We are not expert in this field. We are not competent enough to run broadcasting. But this experience now, this is pushing this situation that we are in now, is pushing us to deal with these things, the unfamiliar things that we have not put in our program before. So this is a good opportunity for us to blend all these technologies in order to serve all our learners, whatever is the situation they are in right now.
So, Attorney Harrow, what is Ched doing in terms of the plans and goals? So, I've mentioned about Ched Connect earlier. Can you please tell us more about it?
Okay. So Ched already launched our Field Ched Connect. Of course, it's an online learning platform containing open educational resources. And fortunately, there are also learning resources which came from our leading universities, including University of the Philippines and some of our international partners. So these resources have already been vetted by this institution. So talaga naman makikita natin na quality ito. And out of their goodwill also, they share these learning resources. So we are thankful na talaga namang yung bayanihan among our universities, state universities and colleges, and our private higher education institutions are really showing in these times of pandemic. Galing din naman, we are also providing trainings trainings for for faculty members, so that they can shift, or so that they can transition into this into flexible learning. We also provided grants sa ating mga higher education institutions so that they can do their own training for flexible learning. Natutuwa naman ang komisyon dahil marami talaga sa ating mga private higher education institutions at ating mga state universities and colleges ang sumagot sa tawag namin. Sa iba sa kanila, libre pa na piniprovide ang training para sa ating mga faculty members. So ito, makakatulong itong mga training na ito, hindi lang doon sa flexible learning natin, kung hindi para din makapag-transition ang ating mga faculty members sa program-specific concerns sa program-specific concerns. At gayon din naman, nagpo-provide din kami ng grants so that our higher education institutions can develop offline resources. Kasi we have to recognize na hindi lang naman talaga online resources ang kailangan natin. Marami or many of our stakeholders really need offline resources kasi we recognize that there are, of course, limitations into their connectivity, and we should give as equal resources to them so that they would have these resources as well.
Thank you, Attorney Haro. Very interesting because even before, while I was still in the higher education sector, I was also looking into that. CHED has already been giving grants to our faculty members, no, for our state universities and colleges na talaga namang suportado ang ating mga faculty. So one of the things also that I really like about the goals and plans of CHED would be, of course, supporting the offline version kasi not everyone naman talaga would have connectivity. So, Ma'am Carol, to transition to that, in terms of the private school sectors and in terms of PACU, what are some of the digital strategies being implemented in your schools, in your member schools, and say 3 to 5 years, what will they look like?
Well, first of all, private schools are very agile and flexible when it comes to addressing institutional operations. But this is only limited, or the ability to adapt can only go as far as their cash flow. So key investments to provide schools for private schools include implementation of a good learning management system. And if you have a good learning management system, you must have in it an equally good content. So you must make sure that the modules that are populating your LMS are also equally as good. And at the same time, you must also have good internet connectivity with good bandwidth. So those are the givens in terms of digital transformation. But aside from the LMS, schools are also investing on several applications and platforms and even software so that they could deliver education correctly and efficiently. So imagine, we have created a new business model where in most of the schools, from a traditionally brick and mortar, you now have virtual universities. So everything right now has to be done digitally. You have online enrollment, you have online payment, you have online library resources, like what Attorney Haro mentioned earlier on. You have your online educational resources, and even online guidance and counseling services. So that's a big digital transformation for universities in general. And then, yes, digital transformation is here to stay. It is now part of the DNA of universities and colleges. It is part of the DNA of education. Whereas before, it was just slowly being implemented, people were a little bit hesitant about incorporating digital transformation in their system. But because of COVID, everybody jump-started and started implementing it and changed the entire educational landscape from a brick and mortar to a virtual university. That's how I see it.
Thank you, Ma'am Carol. So I would understand that, of course, we had to transition and we are forced, everyone's forced, to really adapt online learning or digital learning at this point because we're in the middle of a crisis. So to achieve also these goals, would require coordination between, of course, the public and the private sectors. My first question would be, Yusek Alain, how can privately owned internet providers, since this is one of the hottest issues now, so say, for example, Globe, contribute to your efforts at DepEd?
When we made live the DepEd Commons, the first concern that we got from the parents and from the learners is to enable for them to access the DepEd Commons. They would be needing some loads or some data charges because they would be accessing an online platform. So we made some representations with our telecommunications companies, and one of them who first responded here is the Globe. They whitelisted the DepEd Commons. They made access to DepEd Commons free, so that even if you do not have load, communication load, or cell phone load, you can still access materials at the DepEd Commons. So this is one kind of collaboration and partnership that we would want to further explore between a public an institution like DepEd and a private one like Globe. So through their collaboration, not only through the whitelisting of the DepEd Commons, but through exchanges of different programs and through access to some of the tools that Globe is offering to DepEd and some programs that they have been doing in the past in our external partnership programs, it would be good still to further the collaboration by using all the available tools that we now have, like cloud-based systems, live video streaming, whitelisting also of the learning management system, the LMS, and other matters that would contribute in making education accessible to all our learners.
Thank you, Yusek Alain. So I think it's very clear that there is really there is really a need for a bilateral coordination between private and public institutions like Globe and of course the universities and the schools around the country. How about for Chad, Attorney Harrow? How do your needs differ from DepEd's, and what about the tools that you need also, and how can private institutions like Globe support your efforts as an organization?
Basically, the needs naman of CHED and DepEd are the same. So, sana, in the same way that I think that Globe and other internet service providers gave, I think, ano bang tamang term? Yusek, Alain, parang basically, the students can access for free their DepEd Commons. Sana ganun din sa Commission on Higher Education. We have already communicated with our internet service providers that our PhilChed Connect may be accessed by our students for free. It would really be a big help for them, taking into account na yun na nga, our online learning resources would really help them in their learning. So, sa ganon, para kahit nasaan sila, they can access, o kaya naman anumang oras, pwede pa rin nilang ma-access ang aming online learning platform. So, it would really be a big help to the Commission on Higher Education if this can be, if our students can access our online learning platform for free. Another aspect siguro, since most of the trainings are being done online, if not all, especially now that we have mobility restrictions, siguro yung live streaming of our training would be a big help because we know that our internet service providers also have the capability to reach a wider audience. Kailangan natin wider audience Para sa ganon, yung reach natin mas mabilis, mas malaki. So, if you are able to live stream or do this online learning platforms with a wider audience, of course, that would be a big help for our institutions, for our stakeholders as well.
Thank you, Attorney Harrow. I think we've already started talking with Chad in terms of the PhilChed Connect. We've started also working on the IP addresses in terms of the whitelisting of the site. So this is something that we have to look forward to. Doc Carol, how about PACU and fellow private academic institutions? What would be the role of internet service providers and, of course, in terms of contributing to the efforts of PACU and other private institutions?
As private educational institutions, we really have a lot of problems on our hand. So aside from the provision of internet connectivity, we also needed support in terms of how do we educate our students virtually, especially with lab simulations. So what we did in PACU is we formed a consortia so that we could address various simulation needs of our students. For example, what we did was we, as a group, we leveraged the numbers of our students and we talked to a virtual laboratory simulation provider so that we were able to bring down the rate from $50 to something like $3 per head. So which for us was a big help to our institutions because we were able to put together a consortium of about 60 schools in PACU and over 60,000 students that can avail of these specialized, highly advanced laboratory simulations. But it's useless if you don't have internet connectivity. So what we did next was, this Mark, we have been in constant discussions with our telcos. We have been pleading with them, can you please whitelist some of our LMSs so that it's also accessible to our students? And for that, we're grateful because you heard us and you took a long list from us of all the LMSs, all of the subscriptions that needed to be whitelisted so that we could deliver education better. And then you also listened to us, or the telcos listened to us in terms of providing better rate, better priced data plans. And for that, we are grateful to our telco partners, to Globe, for helping us on this one, because otherwise it will really be difficult if we are to do digital education of our students.
Thank you, Doc Carol. Of course naman po, sa Globe naman, we are very much supportive in terms of education. And all these things naman po are really made available for the students, for our teachers, for administrators in terms of whatever need there is. So in terms of collaboration tools, connectivity tools, we have everything that you would need. Basically, the learning management systems. So far, we also have partnered with different providers of LMSs, and these are like some sort of LMSs that would give us an idea of how digital learning is going to be conducted. So say, for example, the Google Classroom or Brightspace D2L or Edmodo. So these are some of our partners. For administrators naman po, I have a lot of good feedback in terms of making sure that enrollment still continues. Because again, our schools are considered businesses as well at the end of the day. So in terms of business continuity, we have the school management system in order to process the admissions, of course, the payment, and even the enrollment. But some value-added services po, if you will also say, and this is also applicable to the DepEd and to the CHED, we have GCash. All throughout the year, we have been promoting cashless transactions. And now that we have been securing all our resources and making sure that everyone is safe, we have GCash, cashless transactions in order for us to transact without face-to-face contact. Also, we have content creation with Globe Studios and telehealth services for Consulta MD. Now that we are also, that you mentioned also about the cheaper rates for students, ma'am. These are like the My School Surf plans for our students to be able to get them at a lower rate based on the feedback of our academic institutions, our partner institutions, and of course we have device bundles. Say for example, we have tablets that are available also for purchase that are bundled with connectivity, and we also have our wired services with free LMS. So it's a good thing also that you mentioned all these services because all our schools have different requirements and we have to personally craft these requirements. Kasi nga po, hindi naman lahat ng mga institutions natin would have the same rates, would have the same budget, and would have the same kinds of students. So one of the things also that I would like to ask everyone would be, of course, making online more accessible and fairer for all. Online learning in general, accessible and fairer for all. But to our panelists, Doc Carol, can you start? What additional support can you provide to students and parents who struggle with digital transition? Say, for example, technological literacy or lack of equipment. How would you recommend your fellow educators aid these problems?
Initially, what most schools did was to recalibrate their curriculum so that all the lab components that cannot be offered successfully or in a very enhanced way will be offered at a much later date. So that we're sure that whatever theoretical foundations we're offering our students can easily be delivered digitally or through online. And then next, we also made sure that the synchronous components of our lectures would just be enough for their digital plans. So I know most of the schools studied the digital components. How much data plan would the student need for a 1-hour lecture? So we did our studies and we came out with solutions on what is the best plan that we can offer our students, as well as for the parents who will be paying for these data plans. And then, especially for basic ed, because as they deliver education in basic ed, the parents have to be there to help supervise. So that has to be mitigated as well. And then, well, you know, our favorite really would be if we could also have some sort of fiber optic access for connectivity for private schools in general, because we know that it's happening for the SUCs and LUCs. So our next ask would be probably some sort of assistance if you could consider putting us into your plans, especially when you start building your fiber optics for the internet connectivity of students.
Thank you, ma'am. I think everything now is being planned in terms of deploying all our resources and all our facilities all over the country, because as I've said, this is a pressing issue that we have to deal at this point, because of course we need to make sure that learning is available for everyone. Attorney Haro, in terms of CHED, do you offer programs or resources to help families, to help students that have low income or families with low income?
We supervise 1,900 higher education institutions, 112 state universities and colleges, and more or less 1,700 higher education institutions. But of course, yung management is really with the university or with the college concerned. But we recognize that in terms of online learning, hindi lang naman yan connectivity tools. We're not just speaking here of gadgets or of laptops or of computers. We still have to we still have to discuss yung content. Kasi yung ilalagay mo sa online mode of delivery mo will be, of course, the contents. And in SHED, we are providing grants to our higher education institutions so that they can develop online contents also. As to our state universities and colleges and local universities and colleges, we are coordinating with DICT so that, of course, yung free Wi-Fi na tinatawag natin can be better, can be improved. O kaya naman for our state universities and colleges and our LUCs na wala pa talaga o mahina ang connection, ay matulungan sila so that they can also strengthen their connectivity status. I hear the sentiment actually of Doc Carol. Sinabi niya, assistance for our private higher education institutions, and we are also pushing for that. Of course, there may be some legal hindrance, but under sa bayanihan, we are really pushing that they be included. So hopefully, they will be included in the funding so that, of course, we can also help our private higher education institutions in terms of connectivity.
Lastly, Yusek Alain, on behalf of DepEd support programs, what are some of the things? Because for DepEd, I know that you have more enrollees. Yesterday, I had a meeting with Yusek Nepo and Yusek Omali. You have like 21 million enrollment rate in the public schools and 1 million in the private schools. So what are the support programs that you have?
What we now do is to upskill our teachers. No, we need really to capacitate our teachers in the use of available technologies, whether these technologies are the latest ones or the oldest ones. We really need to capacitate them, train them on how to use one technology and the other technology, utilize everything so that they can facilitate their teaching and make their teaching easier, enjoyable, and more effective. Now, this is what we do now. So through webinars, through trainings, and through online coaching, we really provide this kind of support to all our learners. You know, the entire teaching staff of DepEd now ranges to about almost 1 million. And when you would look at the demographics of all these teachers, they belong to separate or different generations, and some have not been exposed to the digital age. So we may be needing to introduce to them or reintroduce to them or deepen their understanding on the use of tools, technologies in the teaching process. So ito yung ginagawa natin ngayon para sa ganon ay mas mapadali yung kanilang pagtuturo. And this is the kind of what you call support that we need to deliver to our teachers, no? And we will be needing here the collaboration and the help coming from the private sector, coming from other educational institutions, and even coming from CHED, because we need really to support our teachers in this regard, and also to adjust the direction of the curriculum on the higher in the tertiary level, so that come after several years and we face this kind of pandemics again, we already have the necessary tools for our teachers to cope up with distance learning, with online learning, and with other kinds of modalities that may or that should be undertaken, whatever is the circumstance that we find ourselves in, whether pandemic, crisis, man-made conflict, calamities, etc., in order that we will deliver really, or we would really say that education continues regardless of this situation.
Thank you, Yusek Alain. So, to our esteemed panelists, maraming salamat po. We really appreciate your key insights as well as your tireless efforts for building the future of Filipino education. But before we end this discussion, I would like to leave things in a more optimistic note. Much as we've discussed, is a collective response to a temporary crisis. So, because we all know that once the vaccine is, found, right, everything will not really go back to normal. But at least this will ease our problems at this point. But let us now ask each one of you. I'd like to ask first, Attorney Haro, what is your long-term vision for the Filipino educational system, future-proofed for any potential crisis?
Before the pandemic, our mode of delivery is generally residential, or what we call face-to-face classes. And then, although there are some higher education institutions which are really capable of shifting to a full online mode of delivery, even the pandemic, kahit sila, nahirapan sila to train their faculty members, to inform their students as well, para makapag-shift sa online mode of delivery. Kahit ngayon, na may pandemic na, of course, we take into consideration that they have to do this in a very short period of time. So my point is that even for some institutions which are already capable for online mode of delivery, they really experience challenges pa rin as to yung sa pag-shift natin o pag-transition natin. But having said this, despite the challenges na na-encounter nila, our higher education institutions are really capable of delivering or of continuing providing inclusive quality education. So siguro ito ang aming direction for higher education, na to espouse, to strengthen our flexible learning so that we can hindi lang tayo magpo-focus sa ating residential or face-to-face classes, but we will also strengthen other modes of delivery such as blended and offline, so that in case another challenge, another pandemic comes in, we are ready for it. We should be able to strengthen all the mechanisms for online, for blended, for offline, make our faculty members, capacitate our faculty members, inform our students, so that this will be a whole of government, parang whole of higher education sector approach. Hindi ito kaya ng Commission on Higher Education lang. We need our higher education sector. We need the cooperation of our stakeholders as well, the faculty members and the students. Dahil sabi nga, gaya nga na sinabi ni Dr. Caro kanina, mindset din eh. Kailangan mo pa rin baguhin ang mindset. And it is, it's one of the real challenges that we are facing now. Yung shift from this new normal, yung shift from flexible learning, ay isa talaga sa challenge that we have to face and that we have to really face para sa ganon ay makapagkaroon pa rin tayo ng makontinue pa rin natin ang learning natin at to emphasize hindi lang learning but for us to provide inclusive quality education despite these challenges.
Thank you, attorneys Haro. This is very enlightening. The good thing about it is that I think we soldier on. Everyone's ready to soldier on. Everyone is taking their part in making sure that the higher education sector is well supported in terms of our flexible learning setups. How about you, Yusek Alain?
In general terms, when we started in DepEd, when I came in DepEd about 3 years ago, ang una namin na tinignan is the resiliency of our school buildings because that's under my strand. And we made our designs, what they call this, resilient enough to withstand strong typhoons, strong winds, and floods and other kinds of natural calamities. The typhoon of Yolanda taught us several lessons about how strong our roof should be. So we introduced several changes in the designs of our school buildings. And when Marawi, the seeds of Marawi happened, when the seeds of Marawi happened, we also look into the consideration of our school buildings being in the center of armed conflict. And we have entertained the concept of safe schools and schools as neutral grounds in terms of armed conflict. And then when the eruption of Taal volcano and recent earthquakes in the Davao region, it made us realize that some of our buildings could not withstand that kind of intensity or that kind of physical disturbance. And we made several adjustments again in terms of the strength and the structure of our buildings. And when this COVID pandemic came in, again, we were faced with limitations and challenges on how to deliver education without really having our students in schools of delivering education in their homes. So we took advantage of technology and rushed all our technological plans in order to deliver basic education. Now, again, if, for example, when classes would start late and end up again in before the summer period, or when we open our classes during the summer period, we will now be confronted again with challenges like our schools have not been, were not built to withstand the heat of summer. So there are different situations and different challenges vis-a-vis the physical structures and even the technological achievements that we have. But we would be needing a very resilient school system in order that we could deliver basic education, whatever is the situation or whatever is the challenge. So it is in this light that we are reviewing all our programs, all our strategies, and all our frameworks so that we could say that the public school of the future can deliver basic education, quality basic education to our learners, no matter what the situation is, whether there's a crisis, there's a war, there's a conflict, there's a calamity, there's a pandemic, there's an earthquake, etc. And we have already learned our lessons with all these kinds of challenges and difficulties. So we should be adopting a more defined framework on how to deliver or how to continue delivering education to our learners.
Thank you, Yusek Alain. And last but not the least, Doc Carol, what is your long-term vision of Filipino education?
Well, first, Mark, let me start off first with saying that never in Philippine history did we ever put or subject education, the educational process, as one big experiment. There's a lot of hypotheses, there's a lot of possible solutions. We don't know what the outcome will be, but for sure, we all put our heads together, we put our support for each other so that we could make Filipino education as resilient as can be. So looking forward, what can we do and how do we work on this? First, maybe the government could create or implement policy guidelines or frameworks that are not too restrictive so that private education or education in general could be agile, yet innovative, yet mindful of quality. It is a must, really, that digital transformation, all its nuts and bolts, should be integrated in our delivery system. Second, I foresee that we will have a Philippine education system that will be anchored on a traditional face-to-face, in-campus experience because that is what we're used to and because education really is anchored through interaction. But at the same time, education can be delivered successfully in virtual spaces that should be part of the mainstream. Universities, institutions should be built to last, or more so, built to adapt so that we all learn from the experiences of today and be able to find better ways of delivering education using the experience that we have now. What can we do? We can develop what we have built. We can have universities that will run simultaneous programs with platforms that can curate and shape curricula. We can develop online and hybrid learning using technologies that cuts across the digital divide. And also, there's a lot of opportunity through strategic development of digital learning. This COVID scenario, this COVID crisis, although it has been very challenging for us, it's also a big opportunity for us to change our ways. Let our hardships be a lesson for everyone. Let us start preparing for the future now. So with that, Mark, thank you.
Thank you, Doc Carol. And we certainly look forward to building the future with you. Learning never stops, even in these changing times. That's what I'd like to emphasize. So together, let's discover new ways to create, of course, to collaborate and to communicate. So this is where together we recreate the way we learn. Maraming salamat po, Attorney Haro, again, Doc Carol and Yusek Alain for participating. It's been an honor to share the roundtable with you. And I'll see you very soon, hopefully. And keep safe and God bless you.